Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori Dickman. This is Quilting with Lori. Today I am continuing through a series where I'm teaching you how to use your scrap stash. It's wonderful to have a scrap stash, but it's so important to know how to actually pull from your stash and use it to make beautiful blocks. We're going to be making the Marching Monkeys blocks today. There's a snail's tail block in this quilt, and there's also the Road to Oklahoma block in this quilt. Both are very simple, and I'm going to show you how they're done. In this series, if you've been following along, and if you haven't, you want to go back and check the playlist and listen to all of the other videos. But through this book, I am sharing with you week by week how to make each of the blocks that are used in these scrappy patterns. So the first pattern that I shared with you was the Starlight block, and that was this quilt right there. Wonderful, fast, and fun block, so you'll check that out. I've got the links below so that you can find it. The next one I showed you, this was a couple of different videos, all 4 blocks of the Ducks in My Pond quilt. So that is out there for you to check out, and today we're going to be working on the Marching Monkeys, and they're just 2 simple blocks to make for this quilt. Here on my tabletop, I have the 2 different blocks that we'll be making. Let's start with the Road to Oklahoma block, and this is just a really simple one. In my stash, because my scrap stash is a very large stash, I was able to literally pull lights, which were in the creams and whites, a lot of blues for some of the mediums and pinks, and then my darks were a bunch of different blacks. And I was able to follow that theme, so it was more of a controlled scrappy, and that was because I have a scrap stash that's large enough that I could actually do that. But it can be just as scrappy as you want. So let's take a look at what is required for that block. So if you take a peek here, what we're needing for each block, for each Road to Oklahoma block, what we're going to need is 4 3.5-inch darks, 4 3.5-inch mediums, and 4 3.5-inch lights. So I have those down here. I have 4 darks, 4 mediums, 4 lights. They are 3.5 inches. And the darks are going to be in these 4 squares here. The mediums are these 4 squares there, and the lights are these 4 squares here. So that's very simple. And then we have to make some half square triangle units. So I have 2 4-inch lights and 2 4-inch mediums. And we're going to make these 4 half square triangles using these pairs. They will be paired together, and then we're going to do the diagonal lines, so scant 1/4 inch on each side, cut on the drawn line, press them open, square them up, and with each pair we're getting 2 half square triangles, so we'll end up with a total of 4. So that's what we required there. So that is the Road to Oklahoma. Now let's take a peek at the snail's tail, and the snail's tail is a really simple one to put together. So I will show you step by step how to put these together in just a minute, but I'm just giving you an overview first. Let's take a look at this snail's tail block. It is really a simple way to make this unit. I started with a 4-patch here, 2 lights, 2 darks, and you'll see that in here. So I needed 2 lights, 2 darks that are 2 inches. So that's my 4-patch. That's what I started with. Then I took 1 3-inch light and 1 3-inch dark, which are these right here. I cut them on the diagonal, and I sewed the lights here and the darks there. So that's 1 3-inch dark square and 1 3-inch light square, which I just cut on the diagonal and sewed it here. And then the next step was taking 1 4-inch light and 1 4-inch dark, and here they are, cut on the diagonal and attach them. Now it is really important as you're sewing these on that you're following this tail as it's going around in the right color. So this is the dark going that way, and it's going that way. Make sure that you're placing the values in the proper place. And so then we went with 3-inch, 4-inch. This is a 6-inch square, 6-inch square, 7-inch square, 7-inch square. Simply cut on the diagonal, and we continued sewing around. So now let's see how both of these blocks are actually sewn together. I've started laying out the Road to Oklahoma. So what I've put down here first of all are the darks, the mediums, and these are the lights. Now in these positions, we need the half square triangles. And so I'm going to pair up a medium with a light, a medium with a light, and these are 4-inch squares. All of these are all 3.5-inch squares here. These are the 4-inch squares from which I'm going to make my half square triangle. All right, so I have the medium and the light 4-inch squares paired up, right sides together. I am going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner, and I'll do that on both pairs. Whoops. And I'm going to match them up properly. I'm going to take them to my sewing machine. I am going to sew a scant 1/4 inch on both sides of that drawn line. I'll do that and bring it right back. I have sewn these two together. Maybe you can see it better on that side, I'm not sure. There are the lines, and what I'm going to do, and you've seen me do this before, I like to separate it by cutting from stitching line to stitching line. That just gets rid of the dog ears there. Let me show you that. So from stitching line to stitching line, I do the same with this one. Just gets rid of some of those dog ears. And now you can simply cut on the drawn line. And I was using a disappearing pen, so it's almost gone. You can barely see it, but I can see it here where I'm cutting. So I'm cutting on the drawn line to separate them. And now I have a total of 4 half square triangles. I am going to press them and square them up. Actually, what I'm going to do is use my Clearly Perfect triangle. It's a slotted half square triangle trimmer. I'm going to use that, and I'll actually trim them up as a triangle and cut away the excess and then press them open. All 4 of these half square triangles must square up to 3.5 inches so they go together with the rest of the squares in the block. So I have these 3 trimmed away. I'm using this Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. I am using the 3.5 inch stitching line here, and I am lining that stitching line up on the stitching line on the triangle. And once I've done that, then I am simply trimming away the excess around it. Oops, I didn't do very good there. And now we have a total of 4 3.5 inch half square triangle units. I am going to press them. If you like to press your seam allowances open, you can certainly do that. Normally I use a smaller stitch length if I press them open, or you can simply press them to the dark side. Let me press those, and then I'm going to show it to you in the block here. Now that I have my half square triangle units finished, let's get them placed into the block here. And what you want to do is have the medium squares kissing at the center here. So that's how they are to be placed. And you'll simply sew it together in rows, and you can web it or just sew it together in rows, however, whatever your favorite method of sewing together your blocks is. And it's a very simple one to do. You can make these quickly. It really uses up a lot of your scraps, and so if you were to make an entire quilt with this block only, it would be a very pretty quilt. And there are secondary designs that actually result when you put a bunch of these Road to Oklahoma blocks together. I hope you'll all try that Road to Oklahoma block and just have fun with it and see what kind of fun, beautiful quilts you can create with just that block alone. But now let's take a look at the snail's tail block and see how it goes together. It starts out with a simple 4 patch. I have 2 2-inch lights and 2 2-inch darks, and I have made a 4 patch. So that's how it begins in the center. And then what we're simply going to do is continue adding these triangles around it. So let me grab my rotary mat, or my rotating mat here. All right, so this is the light and the dark 3-inch triangle, or square. They're going to be triangles here in a minute. I'm matching them up so that I can just do one cut and get the triangles that I need. All right. So we've got 2 darks and 2 lights. So let's look at this one here and see how I started it. I started it with this light on this side and this light on this side. Now, when you sew these triangles together, what you want to do with each triangle is press a crease in the center of it, in the center of that long straight edge. And then you will simply match those creases to the center of the 4-patch unit, and then you'll have excess fabric hanging off of the ends, and that's fine. Then you're going to do the same with this dark, and that will go here, and I've lost the other one. Oh, it's under my elbow. It's stuck to my sweater. So there's that one. So that will result in that first little square. Very simple way to make that. Then let's go to the next one, and this is the 4-inch light and dark. Again, I'm going to pair them up evenly, and then I'm going to simply cut a diagonal. Whoops, I didn't do so well, did I? I need to be standing as I'm cutting. I can get much better uniform pressure when I'm standing. All right, let's press this. And again, we'll notice that the light is over here. I will find that center point there and match it up. I'll find the center point here and match it up. I need to move everything down a little bit so it stays in the screen for you. So that's where the lights would go. And then you do the same with these darks. Press a crease in the center and place them like this. So you'll notice that the lights are moving this direction, the darks are moving this direction. Make sure that you're placing everything in the right location and follow that same pattern. I'm going to do the same thing with the 6-inch and the 7-inch groupings. We're going to cut them on the diagonal and just keep adding them around. Here on my tabletop, you'll see that I have laid everything out for the snail's tail block, and you'll see it starts with the 4-patch. These are the 3-inch light darks, these were the 4-inch light darks, these were the 6-inch light darks, and these are the 7-inch light darks. And of course, once you have your seam allowances in there, it all works together beautifully. It'll end up a 12.5-inch block, so you want to square it all up to 12.5 inches. And make sure as you're putting your triangles on that you're making sure everything spins properly, so that your darks are spinning and that your lights are spinning correctly to make that beautiful snail's tail spin on the block. Thank you so much for stopping by to see the 2 different blocks that are used to make up the Marching Monkeys quilt. And here is a picture of that Marching Monkeys quilt. It's a beautiful quilt, a really fun one. You can add a lot of borders. This particular quilt is using 10 of each of these blocks, but you can make it much larger or smaller. Just make more or less blocks so that you can make this quilt as large or as small as you want it to be. And that's what you can do with all of the blocks in my Speedy Patterns book. You can make them as large or as small as you want them to be by making more or less blocks, pulling more or less scraps from your stash. Next week, we're going to be making the next quilt in this series, and that is the California Maze. And it is a very popular one. I have people ordering it all the time. I do have PDFs of many of these out on my site. I have individual patterns for all of these on my site. And then, of course, the best bargain, I guess, would be the book itself, because you're getting 12 patterns in one book. But that's all out on my website if you're interested in taking a peek, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we put together the California Maze block. And this one is just one block to create that beautiful quilt. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your stopping by my channel. If you do like the content that I provide, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share these videos with your friends and with your quilt guilds. And do comment below. I love to hear from my subscribers. Thank you so much for doing that. And until next week, happy quilting.